we were in negotiations.
Investing in real estate, they're winning, they're making money.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Real Estate Educators Podcast, where we provide the education you can build on. I am your host, Kevin Amolsch. This podcast is so much fun. We're now into season 2 because we're helping real estate investors and we're focusing in on the content creation behind that. So if you're an investor or if you're looking for investor clients, this is the podcast for you. If you haven't yet, quick, leave us a 5-star review. Help us help more real estate investors and more educators just like you. Got a super special guest with me today. His name is amazing, Kevin Ortner. We've known each other for quite some time, but we had never really had any deep conversations. I'm learning more about your story from your bio. I didn't know you're a pilot, for example, but I know about your company, of course, because we've done a lot of business together. You guys have, I think you were part of the founders, but Brenton, I think was his name. He would come out and speak at our events in Minneapolis. So I've known about you guys for a long time. So I'm super excited to get to know more about your story and Renters Warehouse, one of the largest management companies in the entire country. And you have 2 decades of experience. So we're super lucky to have you on, man. How's it going?
It's going good, Kevin. Thanks for having me on. And thanks for all the kind words about the business. It's been a great partnership between Renters Warehouse and Pine Financial Group for, I don't know how long it's been, but I know I've personally done deals with you guys. You guys have financed some of my homes that I've flipped. I've done some purchases that I've rehabbed and turned into rental properties and later refinanced. And you guys have been great partners in that. You've worked with some of my clients. Really enjoy your events, and so it's exciting to be on here talking with you today.
Great. And so Renters Warehouse, it's franchised, right?
That's right.
That's how
a
it's
little
grown.
bit of both. So we started the business back in 2007. I've been investing in real estate for even longer than that, but we started the business 2007 as just a local property manager based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So big market for you guys. And then later expanded the business through franchising. We sold about 28 franchises across the country. I was the owner of 4 of those franchises. And then in 2015, beginning of 2016, we sold a majority stake of the business to a private equity partner that we still have in the business today. And we ended up doing a couple of things. We bought back about half of our franchises and began expanding from a corporate footprint as well. So today we're in about 25 markets that we own corporately. And we have additional 15 great franchises across the country, and altogether manage about 15,000 homes in 40 markets and just over 20 states.
Yeah, that's huge. 15,000 homes. And your focus really is single family stuff. You don't do any, I wouldn't say any, but you don't really focus in on the big apartment complexes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right. So single family homes, or really, I think the easiest way to explain it is almost anything that would, lending programs would qualify as single family, right? So 1 to 4 unit buildings. We do a lot of that, duplexes, triplexes, a single condo unit in a condo development or townhome, things like that. A majority of what we have are detached single family homes. And then we've got a mix of other kind of single unit or small multi-family properties that we manage. We don't do large apartments and things like that.
Got it. So your target is really the mom and pop investors. So
yes.
Our audience.
Yeah, we're a majority mom and pop. We do work with some institutional owners of single family rental homes. So, you've probably seen the articles out there of Wall Street buying up Main Street, which is not true, but you've certainly heard of those institutional investors coming in and buying up, hundreds or thousands of homes in different markets across the country. And we work with them both on helping them buy new homes for their portfolio, as well as, of course, managing them. But that said, about 75% of our portfolio, probably 80% of our portfolio is mom and pop, kind of smaller retail investors that own, 1 to 5 homes.
Okay. I want to get into your story, but before that, we jumped right into the Renters Warehouse, which is great. I want to learn more about that also. But institutional investors, that's making me think people are concerned with this, right? They're buying up the inventory, and we already have a lack of inventory. What is this doing to the market? And then it's gotten such publicity and so big that now there's legislation proposed to force institutional investors. I think it's a pretty big number, like 50 million or something, if you're a fund of 50 million or more, they're going to force you to start liquidating. What do you know about that? And what are your thoughts on the government getting involved in that?
Man, that's a big question. We could take a whole show
I know it.
just talking about that one. So we'll try and keep it brief, right? But yeah, so definitely heard about that. We're of course following that. Um, I think first and foremost, it's important to realize that institutional investors, as how they're defined, especially around like these bills and things like that from Congress, own less than 3% of all the single family rental properties in the country. So not 3% of the total housing stock, less than 3% of all the single family homes for rent. So depending on the stats you look at, if they include these 2 to 4 unit buildings and things like that, there's 16, 17 million single family homes to rent across the country. And these larger institutions own less than 3% of those 16 million homes. So they still own a lot of homes, but it's not a big number.
Right.
This industry is still dominated by, my clients and your clients, local real estate investors, mom and pop investors who own 1 to 5 homes. I think it's about 80% of those 16 million homes are owned by those who own under 5, right?
Yep,
So
I've read
very
that.
fragmented industry and very, very much small investor dominated. And so I think the story of these institutional investors, a little bit overblown and blown out of proportion, given they own such a small market share of the total rentals. And then put on top of that, how much of the real U.S. housing stock do these institutions own? It's a very small number. So that said, like, is institutional investment in this space a good or bad thing, right? I think that's the other piece of your question, whether they own a huge swath of the single family rental homes available or a small piece, is it a good thing? And I think it's like asking if any investor is good to have into the market, right? Because there's been stories of smaller institutional investors maybe not maintaining homes well, or those different stories to read that cause some of this frustration that's out there, and that's by far the exception and not the rule. I think institutions by nature, because of the type of capital that's backing them and the type of responsibility they have, and the fact that they want to avoid headline risk, take great care of their homes, take great care of their residents. We work with some of these institutional owners, and they have very high standards. And so I think they are delivering a good quality product to the ultimate resident. There's been talk for, I would say, going on 4 or 5 years now in the institutional industry around resident experience and the importance of maintaining occupancy and renewals and not having, short, residents who only stay for a year or two, building those relationships. Because ultimately, if the resident's happy and stays in the home, their returns are higher. They don't have vacancy and downtime and all that kind of stuff. And so there's a focus on resident experience. And so I think they're providing quality rental properties in areas that need it for residents, and then I'll try and wrap up my thoughts on this quickly. But the other component of these institutions coming into different markets, and is it good or bad for the local market? A lot of times they are helping smaller retail or mom and pop investors, however you want to refer to them, monetize their portfolio. And a lot of times they're distressed portfolios. We've seen this, right? There's a gentleman or a woman or a husband and wife or whatever it might be, some partner, 2, 3, 5 homes, something happens, they get behind on deferred maintenance. There's upgrades needed in the property and they just can't afford to do it. Now they're renting those homes for, probably under market rent. And it is a negative experience sometimes for a resident. And it's a situation that no one wants to be in. And they're able to sell those homes to an institution that can come invest in the property, bring them back up to standards. And then again, provide a great rental property for people. And I think provide an option for people who are looking to get out in a distressed situation and maybe not have to fire sale, liquidate them or have their properties foreclosed on. So there's benefits from that perspective as well. And then I think that's probably some good points to stop there. I mean,
Yeah,
we can
no,
start
those are
talking
great.
about, whether the federal government should be legislating and forcing people to be selling their housing like that. That's a whole discussion for another day. But I think if you look at the impact that these funds are having on local communities, and the stories that are out there and the headlines that are out there around that the institutions are responsible for the reason why there's no inventory on the market, that's just not true. They're not even, most of them today for the last 2 years haven't even really been buying homes because the numbers don't pencil.
Right.
So they haven't been buying homes in 2 years, so they're not creating an inventory issue. Um, and it's really the supply and demand imbalances that are there that are creating this inventory issue. And so I think they're being scapegoated a bit, and it's a bit of a publicity stunt for some people in Congress. And I think it's going to be fascinating to watch, see what happens.
I think I love it. I mean, Kevin, we agree 100% on everything. I didn't know how that was going to go when I asked you the question. I assumed it was going to be, I assume we would agree because you're a property manager and you have an
Right.
interest in managing institutional investors' properties. But so my thoughts are, first of all, there's no way this goes anywhere, right?
Right.
It's a publicity stunt. I totally agree. So you say it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm like, I don't think it's going to be interesting at all. Maybe that's one thing we don't agree on. There's not going to be anything here.
Sure.
Here's the
Fair.
problem. I agree with you that institutional investors are probably better property managers for two reasons. One, they have the money to maintain, and they hire professional managers. A lot of mom and pops don't do that. So they're hiring someone like Renters Warehouse who knows what the heck they're doing to manage the property. So I think it's actually positive, especially on the renter side of thing. See, now, whenever the government does something like this, I don't want to get too political here, but there's always a byproduct, right? And sometimes that byproduct is unintended, like an unintended consequence.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are telling me you're going to force institutional investors that are managing properties and creating clean rentals, and they have to take those off the market because we're trying to help affordability, that's the argument. Well, maybe you're going to help. I agree with you, it won't because it's such a small percent, but maybe it'll help with median values or home ownership affordability, but what does it do to rent affordability without that inventory, right? So that's what we're not thinking about. There's two sides to this. So are you looking for votes and people are going to love you're looking for affordability, but they're not talking about the other side. So I just curious if it ever would pass, which it won't, I don't believe, what damage would that cause?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to pass. So maybe it won't be as exciting to watch as I mentioned it might, because you're right, maybe nothing comes of it, but it's certainly intriguing watching the commentary about it now.
Totally.
And there's always unintended consequences when you start trying to mess with free markets, right? And you're right, maybe in certain markets where, Atlanta, for instance, Atlanta's like the single family rental capital of the world from an institution perspective, tons of institutional ownership in Atlanta. I think it's been great for the city, and really, brought up some great neighborhoods and rehabilitated a lot of homes since 2007, 2008, 2009. But there's a lot there. So if they had to sell them, what does that do to that market? Probably does drive down median values, and home ownership for folks can become more affordable. Sure. But to your point, and a great point, what about people who still can't afford to buy a house? They don't have the down payment, or they just don't want to own a house. Rent's going to go through the roof because you're taking off out of the rental pool a significant number of homes. And how do you address that affordability issue? So it's just fascinating. I think, all of a sudden you start getting into private property rules and rights, and it's a slippery slope. Some people may say, hey, this is fine. It's a business and it's an institution, and so who cares? That stuff rolls downhill quickly. And all of a sudden your clients and my clients, people listening or watching today, a lot of folks that own one home own it in a LLC, which is a business. And so, do those new rules or way of looking at, private property owned by businesses start affecting everyone? I think it does pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And, I think the threshold in the bill as written is 50 million. But if institutions want to buy properties, if that's really their model, they're just going to start a new fund every 50 million. They'll start a new one. It's not like it's going to actually impact anything.
Right.
That's a whole different.
Well, and 50 million sounds like a huge number, right? $50 million fund. But, a lot of these average home is $250,000. That's like 140 houses. Like, that's not that many houses, right?
No, that's
I know a lot of investors, private, entrepreneurial small investors that have built their way up over the last 20 years that own 150, 200 houses. Yeah. And they're not institutional by any means. They don't have institutional capital. They've done it through either their own, sweat equity and grinding it out, or doing some friends and family fundraising or whatever it is. But, a couple hundred home portfolio is, it's an incredible and amazing thing. I'm not minimizing it, but it's not as big as $50 million sounds, right?
It's really not. I agree. All right, man. So sorry to digress there and what our normal flow is, but I was just interested in that here, get your input on that because it's just hitting the news, right? So I
Right.
was curious. All right, man, take us back. You were a pilot
Yes.
and then you went from that to real estate. I've actually heard several other pilots have done the same thing. So curious, like how did you get interested in real estate to begin with when you're out there flying planes?
Yeah. It's interesting. I have run into um, quite a few pilots in the real estate world too that they may not be full time in real estate. They're maybe still flying, but have significant real estate investments or into it. And some have transitioned full time into real estate investors. 20 years ago, I thought it was just me, but I was wrong. So, yeah, I was a corporate pilot. So I flew corporate jets around the country. This afforded a very unique and interesting schedule where I was on call, quite a bit, but there may be weeks I flew 2 days, and there was weeks that maybe I flew, 7, 10 days in a row. Um, but on the road, and even as a corporate pilot, unlike an airline pilot, airline pilots, they're kind of flying all day, getting their 8 hours, 8 hours of duty time. As a corporate pilot, you might fly a flight, 3 hour flight from Minneapolis to Florida, and then be there for a couple of days with whoever you brought, or until the plane needs to be relocated somewhere else, because flying an empty airplane is very costly. So we'd sit, and I'm not someone who likes to sit. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, so that type of job and being a pilot allowed me to do other things. Even if I was on the road, um, could be researching or looking at different investments or businesses, wherever that might be. And like I said, I've been investing in real estate over 20 years. About my first rental property in college, sophomore year of college, and rented out, part of it to friends of mine, and ended up living rent free, and thought, geez, this is a really great, this is a great deal. So got hooked, as you've heard the story of many people who get hooked, and bought a few other properties with my father. And, we did some things when I was out flying around, and ultimately kind of said, like, this could be a really neat business. I was managing the houses myself, but I started, being a pilot, flying around. First comes around, maybe you forget to collect rent, or you kind of forget to get on that repair maintenance request that came in. Um, this is why people should use professional property managers. I started, looking around, and it was interesting. Everything was kind of small mom and pop operations. This was, 2000 and, 5, 6-ish. And oddly enough, technology really hadn't made its way into this space, real estate even, but certainly property management. And being able to stay connected with my property manager, my properties on the go while I was flying around the country, like, it just really wasn't there. And I thought, geez, there could be a great opportunity to apply some technology to this business and modernize it a bit, and take it into the next century. Plus, I like the recurring revenue streams of management business and all that kind of stuff. So we thought we could disrupt it a little bit. And I teamed up with Brenton Hayden, as you mentioned earlier, who is the founder of Renters Warehouse. I ran into him, and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting a property management company." He's like, "Well, come join in with me here. I got some things going on already." And I did that, and the rest is history. And now I've been doing this full time since 2009 at Renters Warehouse.
So I'm picturing you, man. You're up in the plane trying to learn about real estate with your Rich Dad Poor Dad book, putting in autopilot.
That's right. Yeah.
You're talking about downtime. I assume that's once the plane's landed, but in my mind, I was like, "Oh, it's autopilot, nice, man."
Yeah. No, we try and pay attention when we're up in the air, even if the autopilot's on.
Heard
But
that's
a
smart.
lot of
Yeah.
downtime on the ground, just kind of hanging out, and so try and use that time wisely, and that's what I did.
So yeah, we have a lot in common. Actually, I've never been a pilot. I would like to be, but I bought my first house actually before I really went into college. I was in the Army, and I moved into it when I got out of the Army, and then I was in college, and then I rented it out to some buddies and did the whole house hacking thing before we had a
Yeah.
term for it, right?
Right.
So yeah, interesting that you got started that way. So after that first house, you got hooked, even though you were living in it. How did you acquire your first rental? I think a lot of people struggle with getting that first pure rental property.
Well, that property became my first pure rental property, because I moved out of that. It was a townhouse near ASU where I went to school. Ended up buying a house when I graduated out in Mesa, Arizona, and just converted the that condo or townhouse into kind of the first pure rental, although I didn't acquire it that way. But I think that's a great way for people to get into it, right? So that was how I got that first rental, bought my house, and then ended up partnering with my dad at the time. Coming out of college, I didn't have a ton of money saved, and we bought a townhouse in Minneapolis, where I'm originally from, and where I'm back to today, together, as well as then leading into the '09 time period, and the Great Recession and the real estate downturn. Bought a couple other properties that I don't know, a couple of times thought I called the bottom of that program, and of course didn't. So bought properties and the price. But here's the deal. That didn't bother me at all, because when I go in and buy rental properties, I'm thinking about owning them for 30 or 40 or 50 years. And I put, 30-year fixed mortgages on all the properties. And so the value went down. Don't really care. It's going to be up. I guarantee it's going to be higher in 50 years than it is today. So, it wasn't a big thing, but it was kind of funny. I remember calling my dad and saying, "Hey, God, this is such a great deal." And it was in the same development. We had a different property that we had bought, many years ago. And yeah, I think at one point in, the craziness of the real estate industry in 2005 and six, it was a $260,000 property. We picked it up for like 160. This is great.
Yeah.
And it went down like 120 at one point or something like that. But again, I still own it today, and I think it's worth $375,000 or something. So those things are going to happen. But yeah, so that's how I started buying some more homes, and then I got into renovating houses, and I flipped a few houses. But flipping's just not my game. I mean, I enjoy it. It's nice. You can make a quick buck on a house. But the only properties I ever really regret are the ones I've sold. Right. I'm like, man, I wish I still had that property, because it'd be a great rental and I could have it for long term and all that kind of stuff. So I'm more of if I rehab something, I'm rehabbing it to rent long term.
This episode is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is a private lender specializing in short-term rehab lending to real estate investors. Got a property that needs some love? We can help. We are able to offer funding solutions because we raise private money from individual investors. With more than 15 years of experience, Pine offers passive investors an alternative that provides stability, consistency, and security to your portfolio. If you like real estate but want to avoid the ups and downs and effort, a Pine mortgage fund could be a perfect fit for you. Accredited investors will experience an 8% preferred return and profit sharing. Diversify your portfolio out of Wall Street and into Main Street with a Pine Financial Group mortgage fund. Get more information at pinefinancialgroup.com. That's pinefinancialgroup.com. I tell our clients, Kevin, all the time, like you could fix and flip and make a really good living. There's a lot of money in it, especially if you're good. But you're on a treadmill, right? And we call ourselves real estate investors. And as soon as we stop working, the money stops.
Right.
How is that investing? It's not. So I explain all the time, like I make my money from fix and flippers. I want you to do that.
Right.
Selfishly.
Right.
But that's maybe not what's best for you. Have you thought about keeping every third or fourth deal and just building up that passive income? And so that's something that I preach a lot. And I got to tell you, man, people do not listen. They see that $30,000 payday and they want that, right? They saw the TV show flipping properties or whatever, and they want that. But yeah, this is how true wealth is built, right?
Yeah. And look, I tell my clients all the time, I wrote about it in my book, I joke, it's not get rich quick by any means. It's get rich slow, but it's doing it right. And it's leveraging time. It's leveraging other people's money, and all those things about it. And so the earlier you start, building a portfolio of rental homes, the better off you're going to be. And it's not exciting, right? Flipping a house and making 50 grand or 100 grand or 30 grand or whatever the number is, like, that's exciting. It's fun. And you want to go do it again. Buying a house, putting a tenant in it, getting a little bit of money in your bank account after you're paying all your expenses every month. And then waiting for 20 years, like, that's not exciting, but it works really well, right?
It's pretty awesome when you're on the
transformational for your family, but it's not exciting.
Exactly. It's the only business that I know. It's a get rich guarantee. I
Right.
really believe that.
Right.
It's not quick. No, it's actually slow and can be sometimes painful, but it's a guarantee. So if you really want that wealth and that freedom that we're all searching for, this is a way to do it, and you know it's going to work.
Right.
You just got to be consistent and just be patient, right?
Right.
So I talk about consistency and patience, and sometimes it's hard to be consistent and patient when you have like nightmare tenants. So I just got to hear a story, man, because you got more experience in this than anybody. Give me a story. What's a nightmare tenant story? And what'd you learn from it?
You know, what's interesting is like we said, our company manages 15,000 homes across the country. Over the last 15 years, this business, I've probably managed over 50,000, unique homes or something like that. I should count it up. I don't really know. Like, we don't have that many horror stories. I'll think of one, and I'm sure I'll share one with
Yeah,
you,
no
but
worries.
it's interesting, right? Because everyone wants to talk about that. And that's, I think, one of the fear factors for people of getting into real estate investing is they hear these. And I go around, whether it's your events in Minneapolis where we've participated in before, and people ask this question of, man, what if my tenants beat up the house, or they don't pay rent, or whatever that might be. It's like, it doesn't really actually happen that much. And if it does, it's like small. The deposit covers most of it, maybe a little bit of money, but it's, and I think the reason why this is out there is it's almost like we just talked about with long-term real estate investing. It's not that exciting of a story to tell people. It's much cooler to sit around the campfire with your friends and talk about, the $100,000 you made flipping a house last month versus the new rental that you got, and, put 20% into it, right? Or whatever it is. I think the same goes for these bad tenant stories, right? You never go into a gathering of real estate investors or just family members. We've got the holidays coming up when we're filming and recording this podcast, and you don't go to the gathering and someone says, you know what, let me tell you what my tenant who pays rent on time every month and has treated my house really, really well. Like, let's talk about that story, right? It's usually a story that starts with, I know a guy whose brother's sister's, friend's uncle had a house and this happened. Let me tell you this story. It's crazy, right? And then that's what's propelled out there. So people think it happens more frequently than it does. So that, I think, is the first note. If you're talking about or thinking about investing in real estate, it really doesn't happen very often. I think, I'm trying to think of a great story. This is how much it doesn't really happen.
Yeah, I just tell people, like, look, man, it's a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. And how bad do you want it? Like,
Right.
do you want that freedom that we're all going for and trying to get, or not? I mean, because here's a path. It's proven, it's laid out. This is what it is. And every once in a while, there's going to be obstacles, just like anything else you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm really racking my brain. I'd love to share with you a great story. And it's like, it doesn't, like, how little it happens. I'm like, I don't even know if I have a great one. Like, yeah, sure. We've had homes where we go in and, like, there's damage. And it was intentional damage for maybe someone that wasn't paying the rent. We had to evict. And we had to clean it up. But we have definitely, without giving away a lot of details, because it may not be, but we've had interesting things happen, because interesting things can happen. We've had, like, we've literally gotten phone calls from the police because we've had residents that have been murdered in properties, right? We've had phone calls because our tenants have died outside of their properties, from something gone bad. We've had, drug problems in houses. We've had other kind of things. Like, I don't really remember specific ones, but we've had crazy stuff. One of the lines we talk about in this business, being a property manager, is like the day you think you've seen it all, like, generally tomorrow you've seen something new. It's
That just happened to me. That literally just happened to me last week. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've been lending for 18. And I just experienced something last week I've never seen before.
Right. You're like, now I've seen it all.
Yeah,
Now I've
exactly.
seen it all, right? And a month from now, you're like, wow, okay, I didn't think about that. So,
Yeah.
but it's look, yeah, sure, it's part of the risk. Doesn't It's few and far between. And if you hire a professional property manager, or at least get educated from a property manager, listen to this kind of podcast, it's just going to help. And to be honest with you, all of this stuff comes down to selecting the right tenants to be in your home, right?
Great.
And doing thorough background checks. And part of finding the right tenants to be in your property is to have a quality home, right? It doesn't need to be a high income rental. It could be a lower income, affordable rental property. But what I mean by having a good home is just like have it ready for the tenant to move into, right? And have it clean and have it well maintained, because you're going to attract the kind of people that you want based on that. Right? We have clients that say, hey, I don't know, money's tight right now. Can we, why don't you put it on the market, show it to some tenants, and if they want us to repaint the walls, like tell them we will after they sign the lease, or we'll do this after they sign the lease. And we're like, just do it first. Because here's the deal. Someone who's going to come in and move into a property that probably needs new carpets, or at least a shampoo on the carpets, and it's got marked up walls and all that kind of stuff. You know the type of person it is, the type of people who are going to mark up your walls and don't care about your carpet. So you're going to get what you kind of put out there into the world. And so having a property that's well maintained, turned, and ready to go when you put it on the market, you're going to attract a certain type of quality resident. You can demand, you know, probably top dollar rent for that property in there, which is going to bring you, a different pool of people. And then make sure you're doing thorough background checks, right? There's rules around that. You got to make sure you're following the law, and that's really, really important. But make sure that they're going to be people who are going to pay, and they're going to take care of your property, and get references if you can. And that makes all the rest of it go so much better, which we focus on that piece of it really, really heavily.
All right, let's get into, I could keep going there and I kind of want to, but I want to get into your book. And then we talked a little bit about the market and these things before I hit record. So I want to get your thoughts on that because you've been through recessions. You've seen it. So I want to see what your experience was like
Sure.
and what you're planning as an investor and a business owner for, 2024.
Sure.
But first, Rent to State Revolution. So this is a book you wrote. If we were to buy that book and read it, what would we learn?
So here's what it looks like right here. I don't know if it'll come in. Oh, no, my camera's on fuzzy, so it's not working out. But anyway, Rent to State Revolution. I wrote this book because I'm so passionate about this. And this is why ultimately I got into really loving real estate for myself, but then wanting to share this and help others be able to do it, because the subtitle of the book is Today's Key to Retirement Security, Financial Freedom, and the New American Dream. Right. And I, I think every employed American across America should have real estate as part of their investment portfolio. And I'd say if they can, but I think everybody can if they have a plan to get there, right? And the reason for that is like retirement has changed dramatically over the last 3 decades, maybe. With the unless you work for the government position, right? And that's about it. That's like you don't have a pension. And pensions used to be what people did, right? They got a good job somewhere, worked with the same company for a long time, retired, had a pension, and lived out their golden years. And that's changed, right, significantly over the past 30, maybe 40 years. It started to change. And the introduction of 401ks and all these other kind of things that are great savings tools, but they're really not investment tools. And it's challenging and it's hard, especially with some of the inflation we're facing in today's world, to go out there and really build a retirement nest egg that's going to allow you to live the lifestyle that you probably are wanting to live in retirement. And then, don't get me started on if you should be counting on Social Security down the road. And so my point with all this is people need to take retirement control in their own hands. And I'm not a retirement advisor and I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm a real estate investor. And I know it can be done through real estate, right? Because I've lived it, I've done it, we can help others do it. And so I just believe this is such a transformational tool to create long-term wealth, financial freedom, and legacy inside of someone's family. Just a huge proponent. So that's why I wrote the book, getting this word out to people. And the book takes the reader through the whole process, understand the why, right? And that's one of my favorite chapters because I think this is what opens up people's eyes on why this is so dang powerful, right?
Yeah.
And it's because there's 4 or 5 fundamentals around real estate investing that if you think about them in the right way, you're like, wow, that does make a lot of sense, right? And first and foremost is the fact you can buy an investment property using other people's money, right? And this is your business, so you totally get that. A lot of the folks listening probably get that as well. But like, just imagine if you went into your bank, traditional bank, not a private lender, and said, hey, I want to borrow $100,000 to buy Apple stock. Like, they're going to laugh at you, potentially have security take you out of the building because that's an insane idea. They're not going to lend you money to invest in the stock market, right? You can go back in and ask for a different type of some money for a different type of investment. They're going to throw you up. But maybe you go back in a third time and say, all right, fine, I want to borrow $100,000. I'm going to buy a house that I'm going to rent out as an investment. They're going to say, great, here you go. Like, okay, so you can buy 100,000. We'll just use 100,000 for a round number, right? Hard to find a $100,000 house these days, but you buy $100,000 rental property, put down $20,000 your own money, right? There's ways to even get it for less, and that's probably a whole nother show. But traditional lending, 20% down, $20,000 your own money, borrow 80,000, and guess what? The bank doesn't keep appreciation, right? You get to keep the appreciation. So now you have this asset. You're leveraging the bank's money. You're leveraging now your tenant's money because when they pay you every month, they're actually paying your mortgage down for you. You're taking advantage of the appreciation that we know over time in the real estate market happens, especially long term. And you get to depreciate the property. You get to write off the taxes. You lower your taxable income. Like, it's this amazing, magical tool that's really not that hard to get into. And if you do it properly and you own the property over the long term, like 15, 20, 30, 40 years, again, this is a slow program, but when you're done and it's time to retire, you've got a paid off property, you got cash flow every month, and you have options, right? And what I mean by options is you can continue to just keep it paid off and take that cash flow, monthly rent as your income, or better yet, you could refinance your property and you have tax-free income. Well, that's actually not tax-free income, tax-free money coming in from your property, right? There's tons of options. And do that a couple times over in the whole course of your career. It'll change the trajectory of your retirement, and I believe change the trajectory of generational wealth in your family. So that's why you wrote the book, and that's what we talk about in there.
I love it.
And you can tell.
So let's reach in there, like get your hand inside that book, and let's pull out one nugget that we could share with the listener or the viewer. What's one thing from the book that they can learn to make more money, to be more successful, to be happier, whatever it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to say it's building the right team. Great. Surrounding yourself with the right professionals, I think, is the number one thing you can do, because you can absolutely do this by yourself and figure it out, do some research and use trial and error. But if you want to be successful quicker, make more money, do better deals, and have less stress about it, build your team, right? And that's going to be your real estate agent that understands investment real estate, not just a first-time home buyer agent, but someone who really understands investment real estate. A property manager, optional, but I recommend it, a little biased, but good property manager, right? Attorney, you may need an attorney for lease agreements, whatever, especially not using a property manager. A lender, those types of partnerships, if you find and vet and build that right team surrounding you, takes off a huge learning curve, and every deal you can do is be more successful.
Yeah, that's a common theme. I think with like 100% of everyone that we've interviewed, the team is vital to your success. So I'm glad you pulled that nugget out, because it definitely echoes what many other people have said, which is just evidence that it's like really that important.
Right.
So thanks for sharing that. Now let's get into the economy quick, and then we're going to have to wrap this up. You went through 2008, you bought in 2009, continue to write it down, but I'm assuming you're pretty happy with that purchase, because you weren't at the bottom, but you were near. I think bottom hit in maybe 10?
Yeah.
So you were pretty darn close with your timing. I was buying a lot in that time as well. I took a bath. I had to bring in credit partners. I was doing whatever I could to continue to buy, because I just felt that was the right time. Is that type of opportunity in front of us?
Yeah, so I did invest through and live through that that last real estate downturn. Wish I bought more. I wasn't in a position to buy more. I wish I was. Had I been more creative about it and built the right team, I probably could have, but I didn't. I was just getting started. And yeah, I mean, I mentioned the one property earlier that I bought in something like '09 or 10 or something, and it still went down. I had bought my personal home I was living in at the time, which is now a rental property because I try not to ever sell real estate if I can avoid it. Um, at the peak almost, I remember buying it. It was a $250,000 home. 9 months later in Phoenix, Arizona, the thing was worth like 330 or something. Well, I don't know if it was worth that. It was selling for 330, $340,000. I'm like, well, this real estate thing is awesome. Right now, I was living in it, so I didn't sell. And like a year later, it was worth 150. And that $250,000 home I bought went down to 120 at one point. I moved back to Minneapolis, but I rented out that property. I still own it today, and it took like 10 years to get back to $250,000 where I bought it. And now it's, doubled again nearly, right? So ultimately it's a good investment, but it's that long-term piece. And so I've had several properties like that. We've had to weather the storm. But again, my philosophy is fairly conservative on these homes. Fixed rate financing, as long a term as I can possibly get. Um, then I know I can weather almost any storm, and I don't have to sell properties. And if you can keep them rented, you're in good shape. And that's what we did. So on paper, there was a long time that I had negative equity in these properties, and it never really bothered me because we kept it rented and the payments were covered. And it was like, I'm not banking on the money today. I'm banking on the money in 20, 30 years. And so it's all working out. So I've done that. Do I see that coming? Man, I think that there's going to be a lot of unique opportunity in the market in 2024 and 2025. And if you ask me to pinpoint exactly what that was, I just don't know. This is a really interesting economy we're in, and a really unique real estate market. I'd say we've never seen it before, but there's some similarities to the early 80s when interest rates rose tremendously. But it's even different from that because of how low they were previously. So the trouble we're facing is, 12 to 18 months ago, almost a majority of people, probably not almost everyone, a majority of people were predicting, massive real estate price adjustments and value adjustments down.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I really wasn't buying that.
Yep.
Because what I thought was happening was we weren't going to have any inventory. And that's what's proven out to be, right?
That's the
We were
question I
low
ask
inventory coming out
everybody.
of COVID.
Where's the inventory going to come from? I
Yeah,
hear those predictions. I'm like, you explain this to me. I mean, supply and demand, that's economics. It's pretty simple.
right,
Where's it coming from? And
right,
no one could ever answer.
right. And
Oh,
so,
the
we
pent
were
up
already low
demand, right?
supply coming out of COVID. These interest rate changes happened. And now we've got tens and tens of millions of homeowners across America locked in at sub 3% mortgage
Yeah,
rates. Like you don't move for fun anymore. A couple of years ago, 5 years ago, I call it moving for fun. I don't know what it's really called, but you might live in this neighborhood and say, it'd be cool to have a pool. Rather than put a pool
yeah,
in, let's go move a couple blocks down, a couple miles down, same school district, get a house bigger with a pool. Like, why not? We can afford it. You're not doing that today. You're going to double, triple your payment, right? And so people are staying. That inventory is not coming on. So I don't see prices adjusting nationally. There's going to be pockets, of course, so there's
sure.
price adjustments. There's increased demand for rentals, uh, and interest rates are questionable. What's going to happen? So I think where's the opportunity, to sum up my thoughts on this, is for entrepreneurial investors, small local retail investors. I think they can beat these institutional hedge funds that we talked about earlier all day long on deals, because you can buy one home, go in, maybe it's likely going to be a distressed property, go in, fix it up, turn it into a rental. That's the way the numbers pencil today. To be able to put leverage on a home with these high interest rates, you got to get a discount property, put some work into it, turn it around and rent it. And I think we're going to see tremendous opportunity there, which is right up Pine Financial's alley, because that's the way deals are going to get done, I think, in 2024 and the beginning of 2025. And frankly, these institutions that we started talking about at the beginning of the podcast, they're on the sideline. They're not buying, and they're not going to do those kind of deals. And I think that's where the gold is going to be. So again, build that team, find the agents that can find this inventory, have the contractors in place, do some sweat equity yourself, and you can get some good deals out there.
I don't have much to add. I mean, we're seeing more creative stuff because of the low interest rates. So like the owner carry type stuff, contract for deed, and especially in Minneapolis, that's pretty big.
Yeah,
That kind of stuff. But I totally agree with you. It's distress. It's either going to be distress situations like divorces, and it's just an example, but anything that could cause
sure.
financial distress or distressed properties. That's what we're going to see. And it's tougher now. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat this, guys. It's not going to be as easy as it was in 2010, 11, and 12, right? This is a challenging market to be successful in. The good news is you can still be successful. And when we get through the other side, you're going to be separating yourself from everybody else. And that's really where true wealth is built. So can you be successful now? Then you're going to be even more successful when the inventory loosens up, whatever creates that. And I have no idea. I have no idea what it's going to be. I was always told that high interest rates would create the inventory. And now that actually looks like maybe that is preventing the inventory. So who knows, right?
Exactly.
Well, with that, I'm going to say this, Kevin. So I got a lot out of it. I took some notes here. Institutional investors, don't worry, guys. They're 3% of the total rental market, not housing stock, but just the rental market. Clean properties, I could not agree with you more. If you have good, clean properties, you're going to attract that type of tenant. And let's face it, man, you're going to get more monthly than if you could say, hey, fixer upper, you can paint the wall. I'll paint the wall for you, or we'll take it out of deposit. You can get creative with all of that stuff, but you're still going to get a less per month, I think. You did not say that. That was my words. What you said was the clean properties is going to attract clean tenants.
Yeah.
Good tenants is the most important piece of this entire thing. Everyone could and should own real estate, and your book will help them do that. So Rent Estate Revolution, which you're going to tell us how to get that book in a minute. Building the right team, one of the number one, that's the nugget you built out. You pulled out of your book, and I echoed that. And then look, if you're in this for the long haul, you're going to be able to ride out the storms. You know that markets adjust. They breathe, right? They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. But over the long run, you're telling me that I'm going to be safe as long as I have a long enough horizon. Anything I missed there, man? Anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, that was a great summary. You're a good note taker, and thanks for having me on the podcast. This was a lot of fun. I enjoy these conversations, and talking with folks about this stuff. I get passionate about it, excited, because it's just
Me too, man.
It can be fun. It's a lot of work. It's hard, but I love when people finally make that plunge and do that and go from having zero investment real estate to one. And I think getting over the hump from 1 to 2 is almost as hard as from 0 to 1. But then kind of once you get to that 2, people are unstoppable, and they just keep going. So we're here to help people do that. I know you are as well. So always great having the conversation. I appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, appreciate you so much, Kevin. I know we both got busy schedules and we made it work. So thank you for that. How do people get a hold of you to get your book or learn more about Renters Warehouse?
Yeah, sure. If you're interested in the book and dive in deeper into the stories we talked about here on the podcast, go to Rent Estate, like real estate, but rentestaterevolution.com, or you can get it on Amazon. Just go to amazon.com, check out Rent Estate Revolution, or my name, Kevin Ortner. The book will pull up there. We appreciate the support and hope we can continue to spread the word. And then if you want to learn more about Renters Warehouse, get in contact with me, etc., just go to renterswarehouse.com.
And I have your LinkedIn here. So we're going to put that and all the other contact information, the book, the management company, all in the show notes. So I'm going to close out here. Kevin, again, thank you so much for joining me. I know we went a little bit long, but I think the conversation was just warranted that. So I appreciate you sticking with me. For the listener, thank you so much. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and we are here for you. So if you're enjoying what you are hearing, if you like the episode, if you like Kevin's story, please give us a 5-star review. And with that, I hope you make this day a great one. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. If you did, please be sure to follow and leave us a review. Oh yeah, and tell a friend.